Hello, I'm Steel Speaks, and this is my guide to every keyword in every set in the game of Flesh and Blood. This is a set-based playlist that goes through all the sets in the game chronologically and tells you what new keywords were introduced, when they were introduced, and for who, and briefly how they work. We're going through one by one, so this is the fourth video in the series looking at the fourth set, Monarch. Obviously, if you want to revisit, go to the top of the playlist, sit down and go through it. Some typical reminders about keywords is that typically keywords fall into a few different categories. They're either on equipment, they're tied to one class, or they're more generic abilities throughout different classes in the game. So I'm just going to highlight when those occur and which is which, so you know that, for example, if I sit down against an illusionist like we have in front of us, they are likely to play cards with Phantasm, but they could also play cards with Dominate or with Go Again, those kind of things. But they are very not possibly going to play cards with Intimidate, as that is a brute keyword. So, Monarch is the fourth set of Flesh and Blood and sees the first instances of talented heroes in the game. We also see a new card type added called Landmark. Landmarks are played into the arena as permanents, and they are not destroyed until the criteria is met or another landmark card is played. So if I play Great Library of Solana, there is a way to destroy it with an ability here, or you can play your own landmark like Korshem, which will then destroy the current landmark in play. There are very few landmarks in the game. They're not that relevant except outside of a few classes, but it is worth just being aware of their existence. Moving on then to Illusionist. Illusionist has two main keywords associated with it, though it does get a bit of Dominate, and it does get a bit of some other effects. Those two main keywords are Phantasm and Spectra. So Phantasm is a very simple keyword. When you are attacking with a card with Phantasm, in this case Herald of Judgment, if that card is defended by a non-illusionist attack action with 6 or more power, it is destroyed and you close the combat chain. What does this mean in practice? Cards that are destroyed are no longer in play. If the combat chain is destroyed, both the attacking and the defending cards are removed from the combat chain, and that chain link is closed. If Herald of Judgment had Go Again, it would also get destroyed before that Go Again resolves. So you can imagine a very simple play pattern where I attack with a card with Phantasm with Go Again. My opponent defends with a generic or non-illusionist 6 power. Both the defending card and the attacking card get destroyed, so they go to the graveyard, and then because it doesn't have Go Again, I lose my action point and my turn's over, unless I have something like the legendary Boots from Illusionist, which let me pay 1 to get an action point back. The other keyword seen in just to note about Phantasm is that this is like the default Illusionist keyword, so it's worth keeping in mind. It does come up again on multiple other Illusionists, including on Dromai, so it's not just Light Prism, and it's kind of seen as the default Illusionist. Moving then to the other Illusionist keyword, this is Spectra. Spectra is a little bit more complicated in terms of keywords we've seen in Flesh and Blood. What it does is it allows the aura that exists on the board as a permanent to be attacked, as if you were attacking a hero, but effects like when this attacks a hero will not trigger because it's an aura rather than the hero that you're attacking. And then it says when this card is attacked, so in this case Ode to Wrath, if it becomes the target of an attack, destroy it and close the combat chain. The attack does not resolve. So much like we saw with Phantasm, the attack doesn't resolve, the combat chain is destroyed, and both Ode to Wrath and the card that was used to attack it, unless it's a weapon, would go to the discard pile. The attack also does not resolve. So again, if you have Go Again, you don't get to the point that you get to resolve Go Again. So it's just worth noting. So Prism will play out these auras with Spectra, and then you can attack them to destroy them, but you will lose your Go Again with the attack. So you either need to get extra action points so you can do additional attacks with Time Snap Potion, or you need to attack it at the end of the turn when you've already done one or two things, or you just need to accept that all you're doing on that turn is destroying an aura and going on to the next turn. Moving on then to Bolton. Bolton has a new keyword as well called Charge. Now, Charge is very straightforward. When you play a card with Charge as an additional cost, you can charge your hero's soul, which means you take a card from your hand and then you put it face up into your soul. So it's not an additional cost. On some cards, it's an additional cost. On other cards, it's an optional effect that just lets you charge. But in most cards in this particular set, it is usually played as an additional cost when you're playing the cards. But there are other cards later on where it's not an additional cost. So what this looks like in practice is I play Express Lightning, pay the costs. or say it's crossed the line, I pay my 1, and then as an additional cost, I announce that I'm charging. I take a card from my hand, I put it face up under my hero card, which is my soul area, though people do use other areas for soul sometimes as well. And then that card is considered in my soul, and I can use abilities that reference my soul. So if something says banish a card from your soul to do X, that card is now in my soul, so I can do it. Charge is actually specifically just a light warrior keyword, so you shouldn't see it outside any non-light warriors. It's specifically about light warriors charging their soul, and it's not even seen on light cards, although light cards will let you put cards into your soul. It's not considered charging. So this is a class and talent specific keyword that won't be found outside of that. Moving then on, we also have the addition of a generic keyword called Spell Void. Spell Void is similar to Arcane Barrier in that it stops to prevent arcane damage. In this case, though, it's if your hero be dealt damage, you can destroy this instead. If you do prevent one source of arcane damage that would be dealt. So this is basically a way to prevent a single instance of arcane damage. It jumps in front of the next piece of arcane damage you would take, no matter how big the arcane damage is, but it will only prevent the amount issued on the Spell Void. So this will prevent 1 arcane damage. If someone comes in for 5, you block it with this, you will only take 4 damage, for example. The other keyword that's just worth noting, which is primarily on a lot of Illusionist cards, is Ward, which is introduced to the game at this point-ish. And I say ish because at this point in the game, we were introduced to the concept of Ward in Spectral Shield, and Ward is essentially this text. If your hero be dealt damage, instead destroy this card that has Ward and prevent X amount of damage that source would deal. So this card was later errated to be Ward 1, but this is the first time that we see Ward in the game. Moving on then, we're introduced to the keyword Blood Debt. Blood Debt is a keyword that appears only on Shadow Heroes and is found across Shadow Heroes regardless of class. So you can see it's on both Runeblade and Brute cards, but if there was another Shadow Hero type, they would also potentially have Blood Debt. We also see it on equipment. It's not guaranteed to be on any particular type of card. It can be on any card. The only real criteria that you're going to expect to associate with Blood Debt is that there must be some way for that card to get banished, because the way that Blood Debt works is at the beginning of your end phase, if the card with Blood Debt is in your banished zone, you lose 1 life. Now, how this practices out in the classes in the game is that Runeblade at the moment puts cards into their banished zone fairly easily, and does so and either keeps them there and takes a bit of damage to set up big turns, or just plays them from their banished zone as an extra sort of card draw area. And then Levia, who's the Shadow Brute, uses Blood Debt as kind of like a way to balance her power. So she's not trying to build up Blood Debt in the way that Chain is trying to, or Shadow Runeblades are trying to build up Blood Debt to power their engine and play those Blood Debt cards for more damage. Levia is trying to avoid taking Blood Debt, but playing powerful cards that give her Blood Debt. So, for example, if you attack, you have to banish 3 cards from your graveyard. If you banish the right one, you get +6 at 3, so this comes in for 9, for example. But you now have the potential that there are 3 cards with Blood Debt in your banished zone, which could then make you start to lose damage. But of course, Levia is trying not to eat herself, so if you banish a card with 6 or more power in a turn, you don't have Blood Debt to worry about. And those are the main keywords introduced in this set. We also see a recurrence of, Go Again, all those kind of keywords that you would expect. But those are basically the keywords that were introduced in the set for those classes, and that's how it breaks down. We're going to move on next to Tales of Aria, which sees the introduction of a few other keywords. So if you're coming with us on the journey, you'll find that video next in the playlist.